Okay, hello you beautiful people, welcome back. In this update, we are going to do a full Elliott Waves analysis on TELCOIN's price chart and see what is going on and why do I think in the mid to long term, not necessarily short term, but in the mid to long term, we are going to see some massive price appreciations for this token. Now, before we get into what is going on in terms of Elliott Waves and generally the technical analysis side of stuff, let me tell you that TELCOIN by no means it's some sort of a random project or maybe a meme coin. No, these guys are the first digital asset bank in United States. Their base is in Nebraska. They also have their own special stable coin called EUSD or electronic USD, which you can basically go to them, deposit your money, and they will convert your money one to EUSD so you can use it in the crypto space. And I forgot to tell you this actually, they're not only active in United States, also they are working in many other countries as well. For example, when it comes to remittances, they are also active in those areas. So basically, this is like a legit solid project, and I fully understand its market cap doesn't necessarily reflect this. That's why I want to argue, yeah, you know what? Maybe the market right now is sleeping on TELCOIN, because if I just there we go. Where is TELCOIN at the moment? There we go. As you can see, we are with the market cap of about $355 million, standing at rank 114. So by no means this is a big project, and this in my view is actually kind of a blessing for us as opposed to a curse. Why? Because since this is a good project with solid fundamentals and it's not some, again, random meme coin, okay, that means that the potential on the upside is like much larger. So again, if you are watching these videos, I think you might be kind of an early investor, and I do think in the mid to long term we are going to witness some big moves. Why is that? That comes down to Elliott Waves. You see, let's go actually around here. Generally, in my opinion, if you want to be bullish on any chart and you want to argue in the long term we are in the right direction, then okay, you have to be able to find a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave up, followed by a very slow and choppy move on the downside. Why is that? You see, in terms of Elliott Waves, we call this 5 wave an impulse, the beginning of a new phase on the upside. And if the next phase is going to be quite slow and choppy in here, we argue that, okay, relative to this move up, we are having a corrective movement, meaning the bears are not necessarily that strong, and after this move down is over, we are going to witness some more great moves on the upside in order to bare minimum take this high, and I think at that point we are going to go quite a bit higher than that. Having said that, based on this, let's go on the live chart and count some waves. And by the way, this is TELCOIN's chart on daily time frame. We are going to do a long-term Elliott Wave scan. So what is going on from the lowest low to about the highest high? As you can see, I think this is a beautiful looking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave up with all the sub waves, and followed by that, in my view, I think makes perfect sense to argue at least to about these areas we are having a correction down, and the shape of our correction in my view is going to be a WXY in form of a double zigzag. Here is, as you can see, our first ABC zigzag into wave W, correction for wave X, and this can be from this point yet another ABC zigzag down into our wave Y, and I do think this is actually our final low in TELCOIN. Now, overall, we just said it. This is actually 5 wave up followed by a correction down, meaning what? In TEL, you can actually expect, I'm going to say hopefully by the end of this cycle, but whether that is going to happen or not, I'm not really sure. Generally, I do believe on some big waves of price appreciations, but I'm not really sure whether by the end of this cycle we are going to get there or not. But one way or the other, I do think we're going to go there. In my view, we are going to witness in the long term a magnificent move up in order to take the all-time high in here about, let's just hide everything, as you can see, $6.50, and I think we are actually going to go quite a bit higher than that. And where's the price right now? We are sitting at about 0.3 of a cent, meaning what? If we're going to go up by the end of this cycle and visit the all-time high, this is essentially like a 20x move on the upside, and I don't know about you guys, from my POV, this sounds like a fantastic opportunity. Now, in my opinion, if you want to be a little bit more realistic, I think makes perfect sense to at least expect maybe a move up, but only in order to get to about here, about generally, let's say, the 2 cents area, since in my view, this is like an insanely strong resistance region, and I do think this is a reasonable target. And even according to this scenario, we are talking about from the current point to about here, around, let's say, like a 600-700% move on the upside, and even that one is not that bad. Now, do we have the right setup in the midterm for a move on the upside in TL? In my view, the answer for that question is yes. You see, I think this is actually from this point, at least according to this chart from KuCoin, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave up. Now, here's the deal. We just said that if you want to be bullish on any chart, you have to be able to find a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave, excuse me, something like this. And this specific count that I'm showing you is called an impulse. Rules for it are, we should not have overlapping of the waves between R wave 2 and 4, and in any kind of 5 wave, R wave 3 should not be the smallest wave, and in TELCOIN, trust me, we don't really have this thing. Instead, we have something called an expanding leading diagonal, and that one looks like this. Like, do not get me wrong, it is still a 5 wave, but the shape of it is a little bit different. This is our initial move up into 1. Correction for wave 2, big move up into wave 3 has to be bigger than 1. Correction for 4, it's going to be bigger than wave 2, and pay attention, unlike an impulse that I showed you earlier, in this scenario, we must have overlapping of the waves between our corrections for wave 2 and 4, and this is our final move up into wave 5, and it has to be the biggest wave in this structure. Now, let's go on the live chart, excuse me, and count some waves. Sorry about that. Okay, so what do you have in here? I think this initial bounce in this chart in KuCoin is actually in form of a 5 wave into 1. When you go on some lower time frames, trust me, you are able to identify the proper subwaves in here. Followed by that, this is correction, maybe an ABC for wave 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave up into wave 3, correction for 4, and yet another, excuse me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave on the upside into wave 5. Let's actually real quick delete the subwaves in here so we can see at least the candles maybe a little bit better. Sorry about that one. Let's just delete all these, also these ones. There we go. Now, after this 5 wave up, in my view, in TELCOIN, we are having in here a correction structure, and there's actually a decent chance, in my opinion, that maybe, and hopefully for that matter, the bottom is set. Why is that? Because in my view, we are allowed to consider something like an A, B, C in the scenario in form of a zigzag, which the subwaves for it are going to be like this. 5 down into A, correction for wave B, maybe ABC, maybe WXY, maybe even a triangle, doesn't really matter honestly, and then another 5 down into C. Now, let's go on the live chart and see what is going on. Let's zoom in a bit more. So, as you can see, in my view, this is a clean, very clear 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave down. Followed by that, I think this is a correction of probably, I'm gonna say, starting from this point, and it can be in form of like an A, B, C, a flat structure, and this move down from this high can be like 1, 2, maybe to about this point, the end of our wave 3, triangle for 4, another move down into our wave 5, and on a higher degree, who knows, maybe these are actually the subwaves for like an ABC in form of a zigzag. I guess you can also argue maybe to about these areas we are having the end of our B leg, and in that case, this is going to be some sort of like an ABCDE, a triangular structure. Basically, in my view, you are allowed to say maybe the bottom is in, not only because we are having complete subwaves for an ABC zigzag, but also because what do you have off of the lows? Let's go real quick on trading views chart. There we go. Let's go on maybe H1 time frame. Okay. What do you have in here? As you can see, we are having a beautiful looking bounce back in form of, this is really the key point, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave. And right now, I'm comfortable to argue in TELCOIN, we are having hopefully a correction structure. Now, if you remember, in our main channel, when we were around these areas, we actually made a TELCOIN update, and we said, look, our correction most likely is going to be in form of an ABC zigzag, and this can be maybe a 5 wave down followed by a correction up, and then you may see another move on the downside, and that seems to be beautifully playing out right now. Except I'm gonna say maybe the shape of our correction in here is a little bit different. Why is that? Because sure, you are allowed to argue this is like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and since in here we did not take this importance low, maybe this is like a truncated wave 5, and sure, they are actually quite rare, but it's definitely a possibility. However, I think maybe we are having better counts in here. For example, I can tell you this is an A, B, C in form of a zigzag down, followed by that this is a correction up in form of possibly an A, B, C flat, and we can argue, how about this? Maybe this is A, followed by that we're going to get a short-term bounce in form of a correction structure into wave B, and then we can have another move on the downside into our C leg, and overall on a higher degree, as long as we are not taking the loss in TELCOIN in here about 0.25 cents, we can say maybe this is a correction in form of, you know it if you are a regular viewer of the channel, a WXY in form of a double zigzag on a higher degree. Now, question is, what is happening right now in TELCOIN, and can we expect a good bounce from these areas? I'm gonna be honest with you guys, sure, you can expect a bounce, but you need to, number one, pay full attention to the shape of the bounce that we are going to get, because if we end up having like a very strong move up without a lot of overlapping of the waves, you know what? Great sign, maybe the bottom is in and I am wrong in like very short term. On the other hand though, if this thing turns out to be a very slow and choppy move, which is a very important characteristic of a correction structure, okay, count on that move up to just be into our B leg, and then count on yet another move down into C. And the reason for why I think overall, no matter what is going to happen in this area, in TELCOIN, we may see like just a little bit at least more downward price action, is because in here, I don't really see a whole lot of strong supports until this one, excuse me, I just moved it a little bit. There we go, until this one about 0.3 to about 0.33 of a cent. Basically, you should probably expect something like bare minimum a 15 to even, if we are not that lucky, 20% move on the downside. And this is really important. In an ideal scenario, we really do not want to see TELCOIN getting a break of this level, since under here, I don't really find a whole lot of strong support. So as long as we are not proven otherwise, number one, let's count on a continuation of this move down for another 15%, no matter what is going to happen in this region in like very short term. And then from here, let's count on a great move on the upside. And if we get one, okay, I want you to consider this count, suggesting overall on a higher degree, this is 1, this is 2, meaning what's next? You know it, a magnificent move up into wave 3, 4, 5, and we are going to end up making a good amount of money in this phase. And I hope I explained everything well and you understood what is going on in TELCOIN's price chart. And until the next update, I hope you have a wonderful time with your family and loved ones. Goodbye.